I'm going to start off by just asking our panelists to introduce themselves, however you'd like, name, class year, major, and maybe like, where would we find you on campus when you were a student at Dartmouth? Like, who were you? What were you involved in? Just to get a little bit of a sense of who you are as a person. And Adam, can you start?
Sure. My name's Adam Philie. I was class of 2017. I was an environmental studies and a history major. What did I do while I was at Dartmouth? Where did you find me? I was a member of the DOC, and so you could often find me out on Holt's Ledge. I also played lacrosse for 2 years as well. And I spent a lot of time volunteering as a coach in Hanover. So, yeah.
All right, Adam, do you want to pass the mic to someone else?
I can just hop in. I'm Evie Bird. I was a 19, and I was an environmental studies and anthropology major. And then on campus, I played varsity field hockey for all 4 years. I worked at the circulation desk in the library, so I was often at that desk, probably as a friendly face. And I also did the sustainability leadership group my senior year, which was a really fun inaugural group. I'm not sure if it's in the same format now, but the sustainability office was also a place I hung out a lot. I'll pass it to Rett.
Thanks. I'm a 2014. I was an environmental studies major and economics minor. Seems like there's a theme emerging. I played rugby all 4 years. I was a beta. I also volunteered with Habitat for Humanity quite a bit, did some builds in the Upper Valley, and briefly worked on the library desk for like 2 terms. I think I covered it. Yeah, Laura, to you.
Thanks, Rhett. I'm Laura Hutchinson. I'm also a 19. I was an EARS major and an engines minor, and I spent a lot of time in robo. I was also a big DOC person, and I also spent a decent amount of time at town hall. I worked with the town of Hanover quite closely, kind of just before and after graduation, on their renewable energy procurement strategy, and spent a lot of time outside in general. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you, everyone. And I think I'll briefly introduce myself. I already said my name is Kate Salamido, and I'm a member of the class of 2019. Like Laura, I was also an earth sciences major, and you mostly could find me around Fairchild. I worked for the sustainability office as an intern for all 4 years of my undergrad, and I spent a lot of time working on projects for them in Fairchild or out at the organic farm. I also, for the last 2.5 years of my time, I did research in the earth sciences department. So I also spent some time in other corners of Fairchild and Steele Hall in labs and classrooms, learning about the earth. So the way that this is gonna go, it's currently 5:08. I'm gonna go around and ask the panelists a few questions that I just have prepared that should hopefully give you a sense of who they are and what they do. And at 5:25 sharp, I'm gonna back out of this room and just let you all talk to them. So Laura is gonna be deputized to pull questions out of the chat and to ask you all to unmute yourselves if you choose to raise your hand, use the raise hand feature in Zoom instead. But I'll get out of your way at 5:25. But until then, I still have the mic, and I'm going to ask the panelists some questions. So the first one I have is can you all talk to me about what corner of the energy industry you work in? Like what your company or organization is and does, and how that relates to the energy industry at large. So for instance, like let's say I was an energy lawyer at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. I might say, hi, I'm an energy lawyer, and I work on, making sure that regulations that apply to utilities are followed. And the work that does is make sure that, people who are producing electricity are playing fair, playing by the rules. And so, there aren't environmental problems, and like people who pay electric bills aren't being overcharged. So that's like kind of what I'm looking for here. So Evie, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. So I work at a company called 3 Degrees, and we have our hat in a few different fields. We have a utility partnerships program where we work with utilities across the U.S. to help reach residential customers with green power. And then we have a consulting business that works with organizations to help them set sustainability and climate action goals. And then on my desk, which is the environmental commodities desk, we help organizations, reach their scope 2 emissions goals, which is the emissions that they create through their purchased electricity. And we do that through different environmental commodities. We use carbon for their 1 and 3 scope emissions. And then I specifically focused on energy attribute credits, which are, in the US, renewable energy credits that are related to 1 megawatt of energy. And we use those to match their load and potentially reach whatever percentage they're trying to through using these unbundled RECs. And basically that relates to allowing larger organizations to meet their sustainability goals if they're not directly connected to the power that is green in their region. I'll pass it to Adam.
Awesome, thanks. So I work at Sunwealth Power, which for those of you, I hope most of you were able to be on Jordan's chat last night. You probably learned a lot about Sunwealth there when he introduced it, but just as a refresher, Sunwealth is we're an impact investment firm focused on developing small scale commercial solar projects throughout the US, but with a big focus in the New England area. And we're focused on that smaller scale side of things, the projects that are most often left out by third-party financing. And our organization is really keyed into finding projects that have a positive social impact, working in LMI communities, working in different areas that can really benefit from the financial savings that we provide with the projects that we finance. And so my job at Sunwealth is on the asset management team. And so really my focus is the day-to-day continued operations of our portfolio of solar arrays and making sure that they're producing electricity, but then also that we're turning that electricity into revenue for our company. Pass it on to Laura.
Thanks, Adam. So I work at RMI, formerly known as Rocky Mountain Institute. We're a global NGO that kind of works at this climate and energy nexus now. We have a pretty distributed portfolio geographically, have offices in, I think, 4 different countries now, maybe 5. And we really work on a number of discrete parts of the energy system as they pertain to climate, basically identifying areas that our energy system can holistically become more efficient and less emissions intensive to kind of meet our emissions reductions targets globally. My work within that is really focused on industry and hard to abate sectors. So up until very recently, I was working on the oil and gas industry's methane emissions problem and basically helping design and write a methane emission standard for natural gas to basically differentiate the commodity of natural gas in terms of its methane emissions performance and climate footprint more broadly. Now I'm working more on kind of a broader industrial decarbonization scope and focusing on steel. I'm personally putting together a demand reduction strategy in the context of various circularity scenarios for steel over time towards 2050. And I'll pass to Rett.
Very cool, thank you. So I work at Generate Capital. We're a long-term principal investment firm in sustainable distributed infrastructure, primarily in North America, although we're also expanding into Europe. The founder and CEO, coincidentally, is another Dartmouth grad, Scott Jacobs. We focus on 3 verticals: power, waste and water, and transportation. I'm an investment associate on the team within the power division, focused mostly on community solar investments, where we've done a lot in New York and are looking to expand into other markets as regulatory regimes open up community solar tariff designs in more states.
Awesome. Thank you, Rhett, and thank you, everyone. So the next question that I have is sort of gets at the this concept of like what your day-to-day actually looks like. There's this often circulated phrase that how you spend your days or how you spend your life. And I think that when people read job descriptions for renewable energy jobs and also any kind of job, there's all this language about, the kind of work you do, and it's, working on solar development in communities in this area. And that gives you a sense of the sort of the subject matter that you're going to be delving into. But I think often when people read job descriptions, they don't get a sense of what they're actually going to be doing on a day-to-day basis. And, if you love spreadsheets, like maybe going into finance would be great for you. If you don't love spreadsheets, like maybe going into finance would not be great for you. And I think that I'd really like for the students on the call to get a sense of like mapping the work that you do with like what the 8 hours of your day is occupied by. So I'm wondering if you all can speak about and also comment if you like on how much you like that or not. Like, are you working with people all day? Or are you working alone all day? Are you like writing? Are you like analyzing data? Like what does your day look like? And anyone can start.
I can start. So something that I really like about my job is that it varies a lot. I'm not doing the same thing 2 days in a row, basically ever. And if that is the case, it's the case for a week and then it stops being the case. So I've found over the last year and a half that my role in RMI has moved from, focusing on a very particular research task and doing a lot of analytics and spreadsheets to really detailed technical writing, to a lot of stakeholder engagement, expert interviews, presentations externally as a subject matter expert, and some, to everything, writing grant applications and high-level proposals and high-level blogs. So day to day, it changes a lot. The focus changes often, and all of our projects are really iterative. So my role doesn't stay static over time, which I really like.
I can jump in. So I just started a new role actually as an origination associate on our international portfolio. But previously I kind of, my role was an assistant on the team where I was supporting like how we're set up is we have a trade operations, a few people there, we have a few traders, we have a few originators, and we kind of all work together to figure out what we need in a portfolio and what we need to get to customers. And everyone has their own role. And through my role supporting them, I was able to do market analysis. I was able to work on contracting. It was a lot of reading. It was a lot of Excel. And now in my new role, I have a lot of responsibility doing portfolio management. So I'm like optimizing what supply comes in to, best meet what orders we have placed. So that is, just by the platform that we use, it's a lot of working in a web app and a lot of and Excel as well. So it kind of like weighs on you a little bit, but it's a really important piece of the job. And then another part of my job that I'm starting is this outreach portion where I'm contacting new projects internationally. I get to talk with brokers, and it is a lot on the phone, as well as just like a quick thinking and like making sure that you're buying the right thing and at the best price. And, it's harder not being in person actually, because on a trading desk, you're talking to each other constantly and you have your boss right next to you to be able to help. So I feel like I've gained a lot of independence as well in this work from home environment. But I would just say my work is pretty fast paced. It's pretty urgent. Like it feels like there's a lot of fires sometimes, but it's all like quick things that you can fix. But yeah, your day is pretty go, go, go for the hours that you're working.
Awesome. I can jump in. And so I mentioned a little bit of the main focuses of our asset management team, right? Making sure that our systems are producing and then making sure that that production turns into revenue. As far as day to day, for me and being a earlier stage company in a small organization with 18 or so people, there's a lot of teamwork involved and a lot of cross-functional exposure and interaction. And so that's been something that's been really interesting for me, and an opportunity to learn about the specific industry that I'm in and how a company like this runs, and something that I think comes with working at a smaller company, and definitely an earlier stage company, and something I'd recommend. As far as day-to-day on the technical side, it's making sure that our solar arrays are up and running, and if they have issues, dispatching our teams out to make sure that those issues are taken care of. And there's a strategic side to that, is understanding how these issues are impacting our revenue and our production, and then thinking about these issues from that perspective as well, trying to characterize, quantify, and understand really how big they are, and how they may affect our modeled revenues. On that technical side as well is our production and our analysis piece. So on a monthly basis, really understanding how we're performing and how that translates to the business side. On the revenue side, right, the kilowatt hours to revenue there's management of customer relationships and billing our customers. There's management of relationships and engagements through utility companies, and really everything under the sun that turns these kilowatt hours into dollars. And that also includes incentive programs and exploration into energy markets that our team that our projects can take part in. And then also, my role on the asset management side has that customer facing and customer assistance role. And I think with a small group like ours, that's a focus as well, helping our customers understand the savings that they're getting, understand what it means to have a solar array or be part of one of Sunwealth's solar arrays. So the day-to-day changes regularly. I'd say those are the goals, and it's definitely being on a smaller team. There's a lot going on, and it varies from day to day.
I guess that leaves me. So Generate is fundamentally a buyer and long-term owner of physical projects. And so as a member of the investment team, the job can be broadly categorized into two buckets, which is origination and execution. Generate's also focused on being sort of a bridge to bankability for next generation business models, markets, and technologies. And so origination can include everything from responding to a widely marketed RFP led by a bank on the mature side of things, to thesis development on a whiteboard, figuring out how to open up a new market or develop a new business model in order to deploy less commoditized and commercialized solutions on the less mature side of things. And so that involves talking to people in the market constantly, primarily project developers, but also consultants and bankers who are marketing deals, market analysis and research, and yeah, just kind of keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on in distributed project development. And then taking that through to execution, it's fundamentally a project finance job. So certainly Excel models play a very large role. I spend a lot of your time in spreadsheets for sure. It's also a very heavily, project finance in general is a very highly contracted and legal heavy industry. And so you spend a lot of your time with specialized lawyers designing contracts, as well as consultants ensuring compliance and tax structuring and a variety of other things. So it gets pretty technical. Because we are a structured investment firm, we have a governance structure internally where everything goes through an investment committee. And so there's also a component of like writing and researching and summarizing these opportunities and taking it through a committee and presenting internally to get a buy-in and approval. That ranges everything from very early stage thesis development, like getting approval to go into a new vertical before you have a deal in front of you, but just getting approval to spend internal time and resources trying to find deals, to something that's very buttoned up and ready to sign on the dotted line and getting final approval to invest dollars. Yeah, I think that summarizes my day-to-day.
All right. Thank you, Rett, and thank you, everyone. I realize we're just at the time when I said I would hand the mic over to someone else, but I'm going to ask one very short question before that. And I just want very briefly for you all to tell me, what is one thing you wish you could tell your college age self about life post-grad? Like, what do you wish you'd known? Either, just life or career life. What is a note that you would send back in time, 2 or 4 or 6 years? Or Rett, would it be 7 for you?
Yeah, don't remind me, something like that.
Sorry.
Well, I guess I can start since I'm unmuted. I don't know if this applies to everyone, and both depending on the path you want to take, and probably because, frankly, the market and the industry and the world has probably changed since I graduated. But I was very focused on getting into climate change solutions and sustainability directly out of college. And actually the 19s here will probably tell me I'm wrong. I found that a little bit hard to do. So I didn't participate in corporate recruiting, thinking that there weren't that many opportunities in my industry through that channel. That itself might have changed. And I found the types of roles I was looking for to be looking for folks with more experience, basically, because they were more specialized. And I ultimately took a job in commercial real estate for a while first, which felt like a concession. And I think that was a mistake looking back. You have a 30 to 60 year career. Like I said, maybe the market is bigger and more mature and there's more avenues now and you can go directly into the stepping stone of your dream job, in which case for sure go for it. But I think from a career perspective, if I did it over again, I would have looked more broadly. And even though I didn't want to be a banker or a consultant necessarily, like doing that for 1 to 3 years is an excellent stepping stone into at least the investment or consulting side of, sustainability and clean tech. And I would have had a little bit more open mind about the types of opportunities to start that I could pursue directly out of school.
Thank you, Rhett. I think that's really good advice. The rest of you, very briefly, what if you have anything that you'd tell yourself? I think like maybe the learning journey is like, you can't escape that. You can't escape the falls and the skinned knees, but is there anything you'd tell yourself?
Go ahead, Laura. Okay. I would say and I did this senior year just because the sustainability cohort that I was in asked us to, but just to at least make visioning and setting priorities and writing down your values and letting that sort of guide you, because a lot changes from graduating at Dartmouth to your first job and a few years out, and especially transitioning from being a student athlete, that was my whole world. And then I started a job and I was like, okay, this is my whole new world. But I learned so much about myself, and it's really important to capture that and let it kind of guide you and understand what you're learning, so that you can, at your forefront when you're advocating for yourself later on in your job, you can be these are the things I prioritize. This is what I value. This is where I want to go. It's just really helpful to record that process.
I'll add one. Don't be afraid to take opportunities that really fundamentally test your hypotheses about how the world works. I think it's really, really important to kind of use new job opportunities or even personal opportunities to kind of critique the way that you think the world works. That's kind of how I landed at RMI, and I'm really, really grateful for kind of the formative experiences that it's led me to, and kind of iteratively more formative experiences down the line. So test yourself.
And I would just say, as you approach the job process, don't get caught up in the idea of what you think the right path is, or what you think you should do, or perhaps what your friends are doing, what seems normal for someone out of Dartmouth. If you explore the things that you're passionate about, you dive into those areas, you talk to people, there's always an awesome avenue to find what you want to do and to act on those passions. So don't be afraid to dive in, I would say.
All right, thanks everyone. And the Kate facilitated portion of this has now come to a close. So now I'm handing the baton off to Laura to facilitate the audience Q&A. So you all can put questions in the chat. You can use the raise hand feature. You can just unmute yourself and say, hey, Laura, I have a question, listen to me. But Laura, you're in charge now, so you tell them what you want to do.
Excellent. Thanks, Kate. Yes. Does anyone have any questions? I'm amenable to any and all of the above of Kate's suggestions. Happy to take any. I will call on someone. Okay, Max Holden. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks everyone for talking. I think that was really insightful. My question was really about what was your process in kind of thinking of trying to find a mentor starting out of college beyond just like your immediate boss?
That's a great question. Does anyone want to take this first? I can take a stab at this. I think different organizations have different approaches towards kind of facilitated mentorship programs. At least at RMI, we do a pretty good job of identifying kind of beyond your direct line manager and the principal and a managing director, kind of giving you opportunities to interact with other leadership within the organization. But I also, at least at Dartmouth, found it to be a really excellent opportunity to kind of get to know people on the periphery of the work that I did. For instance, April Salas is someone that I got to know quite well at Dartmouth, kind of on the periphery of some work that I did, and then ended up working more closely with her for some time. So I think something that I've tried to replicate in my professional life now is, continuing to identify who are these people that I'm in rooms with and maybe not directly working with, but whose opinions I, really respect and whose approaches to problem solving I really value, and I kind of get to know that person more intentionally. So I'd say don't be afraid to kind of reach out to folks. I'd say most professionals that I've interacted with are really interested in kind of getting to know people at every stage of their career, and advocate for yourself, get to know them. Does anyone else have a thought on this?
Well, I'll add on just a little bit. I think you hit the nail on the head, which is you need to be proactive. I would go so far as to say, at least based on my limited personal experience, that genuine mentorship is rare and hard to find. And even the most, other than like the most extraordinarily generous people, like it's not necessarily their first thought to take you under their wing beyond like just a straightforward boss-employee relationship. But it doesn't mean people aren't willing to. But I do think you have to make the effort to cultivate relationships. And, that's a balancing act of not just making demands of other people's time when they don't know who you are, but reaching out and, with thoughtful questions, with specific things you're looking for, and, keeping that touch point going. And that can be people within your organization or without, within the Dartmouth network or outside of it. A lot of people are willing to take the time and talk to you, and that can blossom into, really strong long-term relationships. But it's not necessarily just going to fall in your lap unless you're very lucky.
Does anyone else have thoughts on this, or are we good moving to the next question? Good to move on. Excellent. I got a question from Haley Mullen. What are typical starting points to enter the renewable energy industry? Do people often start in business or banking and then specialize, or go directly into these fields? I can really briefly start, or Adam, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, I came personally from a company that's headquartered in Lebanon, New Hampshire, so right by Dartmouth, and I was involved in ecotourism space and involved in emergency rescue and evacuation services. So I think it depends. I think it kind of depends where you're looking and how you approach it. From the renewable energy finance side, I think it makes sense. A lot of people do find their way through, working maybe in an investment banking shop, or like Jordan did, working in power and infrastructure investments prior to joining Sunwealth. I think it differs. I think it also kind of depends on the place that you go, and maybe a smaller group like Sunwealth fields people from different areas, or maybe the specific function of the job that you're looking for may feel different areas. But it's hard to say from my point of view that there's really one track, and I'm not sure if the folks on the rest of the folks on the panel agree or disagree, but would love to hear other thoughts.
Yeah, I would agree with that. 3 Degrees is also a pretty small shop, and I think like half of the people on our team that have different skills did not have any renewable energy knowledge or experience. Like, people come to our desk not knowing what a REC is. So I think that goes to show that the industry is like, you can learn it pretty quickly, and there's a lot to know, but I wouldn't be intimidated by that. Maybe a suggestion would be, if you're not going to find your dream job, in energy right away, definitely go build specific skills, whether that be sales skills, because we have a sales team, they sell, climate action plans all the time, or if it's that, banking skills, things like that, you can definitely dive into the industry at any point.
Yeah, I would elaborate on that I think we should take like an extremely expansive view of what energy and sustainability encompasses. So yeah, if you want to be in finance, as I alluded to earlier, there's probably more and more ways to get into that directly through internships or first-year programs, but certainly a lot of people go through banking or consulting or real estate and then, pivot from there. But there's sales, there's marketing, there's research, there's consulting, there's project development, construction management, government and nonprofit work. Like, there are a million avenues into this. I mean, not to get too much on a high horse, but like, responding to climate change is going to require movement across all of society. So every type of job there is has a touch point into energy and climate. And so you can find a path, whether it's taking a quote unquote traditional role in any of those segments and pivoting, or getting into a climate niche first and then pivoting the role within climate and energy. I think there are an infinite number of paths. And as Evelyn said, like, if you just focus on building skills and doing something that, you think is advancing your career one way or another, the industry is still young and open enough that you can apply that to a next step that's closer and closer to precisely what you want to do.
I'd really emphasize what Rett just said. From my perspective, every skill set is relevant and needs to be brought to bear on the climate issue, and vice versa. There isn't, a particular skill set that I think is more or less amenable to kind of getting into the industry. I'll say that it's hard, but not impossible, to get into this industry right after college, depending on kind of what specific role you're looking for and how much specificity and subject matter expertise that will require, and what experiences you've gathered along the way kind of at Dartmouth. But I'd say, follow what you're good at, what you want to learn more about, what you're curious about, and wherever that lands you, I think there's ways to kind of bring a career kind of back into this space later on, if not immediately. At RMI specifically, kind of, we recruit for kind of folks coming from all backgrounds. Yes, we have a good cadre of folks that are ex-finance, ex-MBA or post-MBA, but also a lot of people coming from climate science backgrounds, from industry backgrounds, from, anything under the sun. So we're really looking for kind of diverse skill sets and perspectives to bring to bear on this really complex topic.
And the only thing that I just add there, with all the different avenues that we just discussed, I think one thing, just being able to explain and show your demonstrated interest in these issues or in renewables, that's important. And you can get that no matter what your job is. You can be involved in different things. You can show it on your resume from school. And that's, for us at Sunwealth, that's super important. If you don't have a background, but a demonstrated interest that's shown and acted upon is, I think, really important.
Excellent. I'm continuing to receive messages in the chat. So if you're planning to ask yours aloud, perhaps chat me so I can have it appropriately queued up. I've got another question from Emma Doherty. Hi, Emma. Good to see you. Did you have any specific strategy to finding organizations doing work related to interests and passions of yours? Basically, how did you find the organization or organizations that you're interested in?
I can jump off. I found 3 degrees actually through going to the sustainability office when I was a senior looking for cool companies. And it just happened that the co-founder of 3 degrees is a Dartmouth grad, ended up getting in touch with him, and it's a small company, so he had a vision of what the hiring pipeline was. And then, eventually I got in that interview stack, which was great. I'd say I learned of a lot of companies at the sustainability like Ivy League fair. And then also something I found really useful is figuring out what big conferences are in the industry that you're interested in. And then it's like, boom, there's like a huge list of places that at least you can research. They might not be hiring, but then from there you can go to networking. And there's conferences like surprisingly all over the place all the time. So those are good lists if you can find them.
Yeah, those are all excellent recommendations. Another spin on that is like pick 5 or 10 business schools, look at the conferences they host or their departments, or specialty programs, whether it's specifically business school. A lot of times they will list either their own fairs or just like professors or industry contacts with their school department. And that's a way to discover things. Also, just following the news. I'm personally devastated that Green Tech Media has closed their doors, because that's where I got a ton of energy and sustainability media personally. But there are other sources, Clean Technica, Axios, PB News, a bunch, that if you just subscribe to an RSS reader or subscribe to your inbox or whatever and monitor that, new company names are popping up all the time. And then just the super generic, like combing LinkedIn or your Dartmouth network, you can definitely discover things that way. And, it can seem like that's hopeless, but it's really not. Lots of people find gigs that way that end up working out for them.
And if you're into kind of the research angle of things, reports honestly are kind of an interesting approach to take. Often kind of combing through who's writing relevant reports on this topic that I'm interested in, and who's cited within those reports or who's referenced within those reports is an interesting way to find new organizations and kind of folks you should be talking to if you're interested in the topic, especially on a specific subject area. Oh, another odd thing, this guy named Ed creates a sustainability jobs list, and I can share the link in the chat, but he does a really great job of curating kind of available positions at every level. And you can subscribe to the email. I did that for a while.
One more thing that just reminded me of also, there are chapters of young professionals in energy all over the country that also maintain job boards and host career events. So for example, there's YPE Bay Area, there's YPE South Texas. I'm just mentioning those because those are the places I've been. There's definitely YPE New York. So they'll maintain job postings, events, a good way to just establish a network and meet people as well.
Any more on this topic, or are we good moving on? All right, next one. What are your thoughts on the workplace culture of where you work? For example, size, background of folks. Is it tough to be there as a young professional? Meaning, are there lots of other young people working there with you, or do most employees tend to be older? And does the age spread affect your work experience at all?
I can jump in. We have I think, a great mix of older professionals that have been in the industry for a while and a lot of young people. At Sunwealth, the work culture is great. It's really collaborative, and I feel like part of that, right? It's a smaller company at an earlier stage. We're kind of growing together, and that's really enjoyable and has been great. It's been awesome to have those older professionals and have people that have been in the industry for a long time. It helps me feel like I have those mentors and resources to help envision my own path moving forward and in the future. And so that's been really helpful. And I think having a job with a group of leaders that know the space is really helpful, or at least it has been for me.
I'd echo that. I find that at RMI, there's folks at every stage of their career. I'm one of the younger people at RMI, but there's also a good cohort of folks in their 20s. So I don't feel like I'm entirely alone in my youthfulness, but I also have incredible access to folks that are mid or even late career that just have a ton more experience to bring to bear on the issue and can kind of appropriately navigate our strategy. So it's a good mix.
Yeah, that was a question I asked in like every interview I had, just trying to understand like what the makeup of the company is. And then something really unique about 3 Degrees that also might be a good job finding network is we're a B Corp, which is certified through B Lab, a nonprofit, as a benefit corporation. And then we're also legally a benefit corporation. I'm happy to talk more about that. But basically, we have a lot of standards that relate directly to our social and environmental governance within our company. And I've found that 3 Degrees does a lot of unique things due to that and really thinks about how they're managing its employees and, kind of creates some cool benefits that, maybe I wouldn't have seen if I went somewhere else. So the B Corp directory, also there's like 3,500 companies around the world that are B Corp. So something cool that you guys can also look into.
Anyone else on this one? Brett, did you want to?
Sure, I can. I would say this is a super case-by-case question about any individual company or group, and also what any individual person is looking for. I've kind of run the gambit. I've been part of a big publicly traded organization where I was the youngest person on the team by 10 years. And culturally, I wasn't like going out and getting drinks with my coworkers a lot or anything like that, but it was a huge learning experience. And I had to come up the learning curve really quickly and do work kind of above my entry level pretty quickly and learned from folks who knew they were doing. So that was still an excellent experience. I think, if you're broadly categorizing things, you are looking for a lot of folks your age. There's kind of 2 ways to achieve that. One is a bigger, more institutional group that's hiring classes of people. Another is the opposite end of the spectrum, which is like a scrappy startup with a bunch of 30-year-olds. And those are 2 ways to find places with more young people. It's kind of the middle market, smaller shops where there's probably not as many young people, but they might be doing some of the most high impact specialized work. So they can still be awesome opportunities. I think you just have to feel it out as you go. So like my new role at Generate, we hire very few people directly out of, well, pretty much no one directly out of school. The youngest folks have, 3 to 5 years of experience, just because what we're doing is pretty specialized. But there's a ton of people 25 to 30, like there are big associate classes. And so that's great for someone at my stage of the career, so that kind of the middle market, but getting big enough to have classes of young people. But led by folks with decades of experience who have a lot to teach and can lead us through things. So it's a good combo.
Excellent. I have another question from Federico. I'm a chemical engineering major. Should I pursue an energy specific grad degree, or should I pursue a general engineering degree and build skills? On this, really depends on, I think, what role you would like to play in a future job. I think if you want to be a specific subject matter expert and delve into the nitty-gritty, doing kind of research-oriented tasks in the energy sector, a grad degree might be what you need to do in that position. But if you're hoping to leverage your major and that subject matter in a more general sense, applying the principles of chemical engineering or some learnings and approaches from engineering as a broader discipline to kind of a more high level problem, I don't necessarily think that you need to pursue a grad degree in the interim. So, perhaps an approach would be to test kind of what role you might want to play in this ecosystem and find an internship opportunity or similar that kind of lets you test that. Any other comments on that one?
Well, if you're a chemical engineer, you're already smarter than me, so I can't really offer too much specific advice, unfortunately. But I think what Laura said is good, which is, figure out what degree of education is required for the path you want to take. With a chemical engineering degree, you can probably go get almost any job you want, whether it has anything to do with engineering or not. But if you want to do really advanced research, then specialized training is probably going to be necessary.
Anyone else on that one? I also have no more questions queued in the chat, so send them along or feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have one. Oh, I just got one. Do panelists see themselves as moving on from their current job soon or sticking around? I know it's frequently said that people in our generation tend to hop around jobs a lot, so curious if that applies here. When would you know when it's right to leave or change jobs?
Yeah, I just got promoted, so I think I'm gonna, stay in this second role another year or two, but it's definitely, I think it also depends on like what else is happening in your life. Like if you have to move or things like that, that can be kind of a natural inflection point to look for something else. But also in this remote world, it's easy to, ask to relocate as well. But, for example, one of my coworkers that started at the same time as me, he, I went on the international path on my team and he was trying to continue on the North American side of our portfolio and there wasn't as much growth there. And although he got promoted, he actually recently decided to move on because he found an opportunity that is actually going to allow him for more career growth and responsibility. So I think there also, if you don't really have a clear vision on what your growth could be for the next year or so, as a younger person, from an entry-level position, it might be a good time to kind of reflect on that and see if there's other opportunity.
Yeah, I would, for myself, specific to the organization that I'm in, we're at an early stage and I'm excited to grow with the organization, and I see a lot of room for my own personal and professional growth here. So I really hope to stay as long as they'll keep me. I'd say, like, as far as advice on that, just try to be thoughtful about the steps that you're taking add up to a longer term story and experience that you're building. The grass is not necessarily always greener on the other side, and it's really important to think about how opportunities align with your overall longer term interests, and it can be difficult to put things in that perspective, but really trying to think about how a current role builds up on your opportunity to grow, to increase your base of knowledge in an area that you're interested in, or perhaps if another opportunity allows you to pursue something and you can see a longer term path there. I just think that longer term piece is really, really important, and being thoughtful about that.
Yeah, I don't think I'll contradict that, but I think maybe just like add some flavor to it, which is that I've tended to think about the jobs I'm taking as 3 to 5 year commitments, because I think it's unrealistic to really envision beyond that. Now, hopefully it's a 30-year commitment. It's the last job you ever take, because that's how happy you are there. But it's really hard to know before you join, and it's really hard to know what's going to be going on in your life or the world further out than that. Your first job out of school, you can probably shrink that to like 1 to 3 year commitment, because it's even harder to know. And so while it's excellent advice to have a long-term vision of how does this build to what you think you want your future to be, you don't need to place the weight of the world on any one job that you take. It'd be great if you took one job, if that's what you want. It'd be great if you took one job out of school and that was the rest of your life's career, but it's probably not going to be, and that's fine. Building blocks are okay, moving around is okay. Do something that you can contribute to and can contribute to your growth in the short to medium term, and then you'll figure it out as you go. And like one other piece of general advice I would say is that once you've got a little bit of experience under your belt, like you're never going to be certain about when is the right time to leave. I think that was a part of the question, but it's okay to back yourself. You know, it's okay to leave and take time off and come back to work. I took a year off and through hiked the PCT, and that was a terrifying decision. And I was scared I would never get another job, but I did. It was okay. So, you know, you just have to go with your gut and believe that things are going to work out. I wouldn't necessarily take 5 years off right out of school when you've never had a job, but, you know, get a little bit of experience under your belt and it'll become more clear as you go. And no one job you take has to be the be all end all of the rest of your career.
I'd echo most of that. A couple little tidbits I'd add are check in with yourself pretty often. I think it's important to kind of consistently evaluate and reevaluate, what am I getting out of this? Am I continuing to be happy and kind of work on the things I want to be working on, get exposure to the things I want to get exposure to? And am I still learning? Am I still having fun? So I definitely recommend doing that. Secondly, oh, I had another piece. What was it? It was that on a personal note, I feel like the rationale I told myself coming out of Dartmouth is, this is a test, but also there are so many things that I think I would be interested in doing at this juncture. I have really distributed interests. I want to use this time to kind of dive deeply into one and see where it takes me. And at some point, I will probably want to go to grad school and kind of continue to build on skill sets that I feel like I'm lacking, or use it as a kind of transitional step to a different part of the space. I don't think I'll want to leave the space entirely because it's fascinating. I'm biased, but it's fascinating. But I haven't reached that juncture, and I don't think I will for some time, especially given that within RMI, there's a lot of opportunities to kind of move around to different roles. And like Evelyn, I got promoted recently, so that opens up new opportunities too. Okay, I did get a couple additional questions, but we have 4 minutes left and Kate's back, so I'm going to toss it back to her and see what she wants to do.
Yeah. What do I want to do? Well, first I want to add something to the question that was just asked, and that's that, you know, I think when you graduate college, there's this idea that like you graduate college and now you need to figure out the rest of your life. And that's actually not true. You just need to figure out the next thing that keeps you like financially solvent, like possibly have health insurance and like have some pasta or beans to eat tonight. So like you're really never, I don't think there's any point in your life when you're coming up with a 20-year plan. I think you're coming up with like a right now plan. So if that helps take pressure off of anyone, you know, take that thought and run with it. I think that I do want to be respectful of everyone's time and close this out at 6, but maybe if folks have questions that are outstanding, panelists, are you okay with people connecting with you, with me handing out your email addresses and people connecting with you? All right, I'm getting thumbs up. Awesome. So if you have a question that you still want to ask, send that to me. Everyone should have my email address. And I can send that to whichever panelist you wish to ask that of. And maybe if you send them chocolates in the mail, they might consider getting on a call with you and chatting about you and your path further throughout your life. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for being here tonight. Thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you for everyone for having such great questions. And yeah, we hope to see you tomorrow evening as well. And have a great rest of your day.